Welcome back to Cosmic Comics. Spawn issue number 3, Questions Part 3, published in August of 1992. This issue is dedicated to Jerry the Joker Robinson, who is co-creator of Robin and the Joker. Story, Pencils and Inks by Todd McFarlane. Letters by Tom Warzikowski. And this is the first real staffing change we see as Terry Fitzgerald replaces Wanda Kolomajic as editor. Colors by Steve Olip and Ruben Rude and Ollie Optics. So issue number 2 wraps up with it looking like Spawn and Violator are about to throw down, but sadly we have to wait as it turns out Violator allowed Spawn to walk away. This issue picks back up with Al hanging out in the alleyways of New York. He's remembered his wife's name, Wanda Blake. This splash page is the first time recurring character Grandma Blake, Wanda's grandmother, is mentioned in the series. Al talks about how she had a fit over Wanda not taking Al's last name. Al mentions needing to check in on his brothers, mom, and dad. Al recognizes that after 5 years, everybody he knows and loved could be dead. Al wants to see Wanda more than anybody else, but first he needs to track down her current whereabouts, and in order to do that, he plans on breaking into the CIA. This issue gives us a shared universe moment via a cross-promotional name drop when Al thinks about how his powers make him feel like a Youngblood. Al decides to put his secondary goal, figuring out how he died, to the side in order to concentrate on locating his wife. Afterwards, he'll track down whomever is behind this bad deal. This is the first time we learn anything about Al's thoughts on religion. When living, we learn that he was an agnostic or atheist, or at the very least lacked a solid connection to organized religion in his personal life, as back then he didn't believe in religion. Al's atheism during life will be confirmed in another issue or two. At the end of the page, Al refers to the person he made the deal with as the devil for the first time, and alludes that the initial bargain might have been as simple as, "Let me see my wife, and you can have my soul." What Al didn't expect to lose as part of the bargain was his identity. Now that his memories are returning, he's beginning to focus on vengeance. What Al doesn't realize is he's dancing like a marionette on Malabulge's strings. And if anybody is wondering why I'm calling him Malabulge instead of Malabulgia, it's because he is initially introduced in the series under this name. I can't recall when it's changed in the future issues, but I definitely remember having to go and find old issues when I first noticed it to ensure I wasn't experiencing a Mandela effect. In this scene, Malabulge refers to his deal with Simmons as one he can't lose. Again, it is implied that the deal with Al, or perhaps Hellspawns in general, comes with some level of risk to Malabulge. He also implies that deals like this are old news for him, something he's done plenty of times. Now that Malabulge has a new Hellspawn, he makes it his personal mission to turn his new life into a living hell. These next couple of sentences have long-standing importance for the series as a whole, and I quote, "Yes, my dear friend, it wasn't by accident that you were picked to receive the power. Your life history made you the perfect choice. How amusing. A hired killer now thinks he can have morals." The idea that Al was chosen for this role becomes a recurring theme in the series as we see all the ways that Hell groomed Al's personal life and family history going back generations, but we'll get to that eventually. Malabulge tells us that Al's life history made him the perfect choice to become a Hellspawn. So much of what Hell is in this series and the what and why are all put forward by Malabulge as he continues. "Morals are not a luxury we are granted. We do because we have to. That is enough. Rhyme or reason is irrelevant. We must grow. Our army must grow." These themes Malabulge puts forward are reflected over and over again through the series. Both heaven and hell are caught in an eternal war for souls. Should one get too far ahead, they would annihilate the other side. From what we learn later on, Malabulge appears to be telling the truth. Both heaven and hell continue to grow for the sake of growing, because to stop growing, to do anything else, would be to terminate their own existence. Rhyme, reason, and morals have been removed from the equation until now both sides are left, as Malabulge says, "We do because we have to." Every big bad evil guy needs some minions working for him, so Malabulge lets us know that he's got friends keeping an eye on Al. Malabulge then gets a hearty laugh over making a very tired joke about how Al should have read the fine print to their bargain. trust me, this joke has been tired since at least 1992. Back at the CIA headquarters in New York, Billy Miller is in the middle of sexually harassing his married female secretary Linda. Billy backs off, but only after she shoots him down 3 times. A rebuffed Billy finds his file cabinet open and slams shut the drawer marked B. We see Spawn standing in the shadows. Spawn strikes out, lifting Billy up by his throat. It appears as though Al did some homework because he knows that Billy hasn't paid any alimony or child support since his divorce and threatens to kill Billy if he doesn't get caught up. It's cute, it's funny, and it totally lands when Al tells Billy that some people would give their life to have a wife and family. Finally, Al threatens Billy with physical violence if he ever touches his secretary again. It's interesting that this sex criminal's name is Billy, and in just 2 more issues, Todd McFarlane will introduce an even more sexually deviant criminal whose name is also Billy. Todd McFarlane, buddy, you got something you need to tell us? As Al becomes more violent, we see this is the reaction Melibulge was hoping for. With Billy out of the way, Al is free to locate the file he needs. Why was the B filing cabinet open when Billy came in? Because the file Al was searching for was Wanda Blake. It's cute that it's easier to locate a paper file than to pull this information off of a computer. The file gives Al some background on Wanda's charitable activities and his name while he's been gone, and lets him know that she's currently living in Queens, New York. It's implied that this is beneath her family's standing, and then Al sees something in the file that sends him into a state of shock. The next day, Al stops by to visit Wanda Blake. Before going up to the house, Al makes himself appear more presentable and once again finds himself turned into a blonde-haired white male. The form Al is taking here will later be revealed to be that of Jim Downing, who will play a significant role in the comic's future. Okay, here we have our first continuity error. Al says that he and Wanda dated for 5 years and were married for 3. In issue number 1, we were told that Al and Wanda were introduced to one another by Terry Alexander at the 1984 Republican National Convention. Let's say a little bit of time may represent some overlap and round that off to a conservative 7 years, meaning one of 4 things. 1. Al was introduced to Wanda several years earlier, most likely at the 1980 Republican National Convention. 2. Al didn't die until at least 1991. 3. Al is confused and has his dates mixed up. Or 4. Todd McFarlane made a mistake. My money is on the last one. Either way, between Todd writing the issues, Tom doing the lettering, and Terry acting as editor, you would have thought that somebody would have caught this before sending it to print. Soon after ringing the doorbell, Al finds himself face-to-face with his widowed wife, Wanda Blake. Al catches her while she is trying on a dress for a business meeting later in the evening. She looks stunning and leaves Al speechless for a moment. I have to point out, as of this moment, from what we've been told, Melibulge has completed his part of the bargain. Al Simmons has now seen his widowed wife, Wanda Blake, again. The dog can't help but growl, but starts coming around by the next panel. We'll learn in a couple of pages that this was Al's dog before he died and hasn't liked anybody since Al passed away. Al's excuse for being there is he's with the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals and is checking up on the dog's license. Okay. His spiel is interrupted by a young girl crying out for her mother. Al is caught off guard by this because he was under the impression that Wanda couldn't have children. Wanda tells him that her daughter is 15 months old, which puts the date of conception about 2 years prior. Seeing this child makes Al believe that the reason for their inability to have children while they were married was all because of him. What Wanda wanted more than anything else when the two of them were together was a child, to become a family. Having seen what might have been, Al can't handle it and passes out on the front porch. Do dead people pass out? Wanda calls for Terry, who rushes out from inside of the house. This is what had sent Al into shock earlier, discovering that after he died, Wanda married his best friend Terry Alexander. Terry offers to call the blonde stranger's family or wife, to which Al replies that he doesn't have a wife anymore. This is such a great line because it shows that Al has accepted the reality of the situation. He's been gone for 5 years and is barging in on a seemingly happy family. The humorous double entendres continue back and forth for a few lines before Terry explains that Wanda's husband passed away in the line of duty 5 years ago. Terry, unbeknowingly, keeps throwing daggers at Al's heart. Terry explains that Wanda's husband was his best friend and that it was the tragedy of losing Al that brought Terry and Wanda together. It's nice that Wanda comes in and salvages the situation by pointing out that your good memories of the past belong to you as long as you can hold on to them. Wanda notices how much the dog seems to like Al. Wanda thinks it must be because he has a kind soul, and Al jokingly says, "Not anymore." I love how Todd McFarlane is capable of keeping a lighthearted tone to this very important meeting without taking away from the gravity of the situation. Todd is having a little bit too much fun with the double meanings in the conversations. Wanda tells the stranger on her couch that he seems like a strong person. She tells him to take that gift and share it with others, and she's sure that his ex-wife doesn't want him to stop being himself. Wow, if Al had listened, who knows how things might have turned out. Al lets her know that his ex-wife doesn't know about his life anymore, and if he told her how he felt, it would destroy the happy life she's built for herself. Al realizes the mistake he's made and apologizes for the interruption into their day. I'd like to point out that although this is Cyan's first appearance, that we don't learn her name at this time. Once the sun goes down, Al flips out, letting loose his anger. He doesn't understand why everything now just feels like one big cruel prank. After all, Al willingly offered his soul. He didn't want any crazy powers. He just wanted to be with his wife. Al goes back and forth from mopey to angry a lot in these early issues of Spawn. What it all boils down to is Al is angry that his wife has moved on. To make matters worse, he's having a hard time dealing with the emotional pain that comes from believing that he was incapable of giving her the child that she always wanted. Al's rage continues to grow against the devil he made a deal with. He gets cocky, wanting to see who has more power. I have never understood this mentality. After all, Al was seemingly gifted his power by Malabulge, and I would assume that Malabulge has more of that power. And as if to drive this point home, Todd drops in a necroplasm counter. We see that Spawn's recent outburst took a huge toll on his power reserves. He's already lost more than 10% of what he started with. Spawn is angry and looking for a fight, and that's when Violator arrives. Violator starts by pointing out all the things that he and Spawn have in common, such as killing, maiming, slaughtering, and destroying. He knows Al did these things when he worked for the government, letting Al know once more that this guy might know more about Al's situation than he does. We get the twiddly-dink sparkles once more as Shorty changes into Violator. Al doesn't know what's going on, but again, he's pumped for a fight and ready to send a message to this dude's boss. Violator throws the first punch, and it's a doozy. I remember being shocked by this moment when I first read the comic, as Violator pulls out Spawn's heart. You turn the page and expect Spawn to be standing there, but no, he's out cold on the ground. But let's focus on the top of the page first. We learn several interesting things here that will carry over as themes throughout the series. First, as mentioned previously, Al is special. To be chosen to be a Hellspawn is special, and Al is considered special even among them. Secondly, Violator lets us know that Malabulge has spent lots of time on Al, the implication being more so than he typically does on a Hellspawn. Third, Al is expected to have special powers. It hasn't been addressed this early on in the series, but a Hellspawn changes over time. It's interesting that Violator was either hoping or expecting to see some of that specialness this early on. Fourth, Violator lets us know that Al is feared even more than himself. Violator is jealous of that fact. Specifically, Violator seems annoyed that others fear a human more than himself, and then Spawn's voice speaks out. And I want to stop and give props to Tom Orzechowski. We know that it's Spawn speaking because of the unique way the word bubble looks, and this has been set up in the previous issues. And if we look at Violator's word bubbles, we see that his also have a unique look. This kind of narrative coding is great because the writer can have off-panel characters speak, and you can still recognize which character is speaking. I love it. The issue ends with this great 2-page spread. It looks like Violator's jaw has dropped, but then he always holds his mouth like that. And this imagery is over the top. Violator still holding on to Spawn's heart, while Spawn himself has a massive glowing green hole going completely through his chest where his heart used to be. And in this moment, I totally want to see what happens next. Granted, this picture looks pretty tame by today's standards, but at the time, This was all anybody could talk about. When this issue came out, it made waves. One final point on this spread. Earlier in the issue, Spawn passed out from seeing his wife, suggesting a physical cause and effect relationship with his body, but that same logic doesn't hold up here unless Spawn is using his necrotic powers to keep his body functional without a heart. Let's wrap up by checking in on Sam and Twitch. The mayor's office has assigned a new task force to working the heart surgeon murders. Those cops have taken to the street. Police Chief Banks has assigned detectives Sam and Twitch to handle the reports as they are sent back to the precinct. Sam wants to continue actively investigating the case, but feels that his superiors have tied his hands. I love the slow burn the Sam and Twitch subplot is given. This issue, we kinda got a fight between Spawn and Violator. If you consider one punch to be a fight, things look more promising next month. The layers continue to get added to this onion of a story. I'll finish up the questions arc of Spawn in the next episode. If you're enjoying this series, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and to get more great comics content, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to know when the latest Spawn episode comes out, ring that bell. Thanks for watching Cosmic Comics. I'm out.